All right. Welcome everyone to this week's office hours. As you can see, we are talking about my coding approach with AI. We'll give everybody a couple minutes to filter in because it is exactly 11 o'clock. So I know not everybody's sitting at their browser hitting refresh, waiting for my stream to start. So we'll give it a minute. Let everybody filter in and then we'll get the party started. This will be our standard approach where I pretend like I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. I try and keep it under 20 minutes. Then at that point, we hand the ball off to you and it's free game for you to ask any questions. This is something that's very important to me. One of the things that I've always struggled with is getting the answers that I need. Oftentimes you come to a webinar or a live stream or a conference, something like that, hoping somebody's going to answer the question that you have, but it rarely delivers on exactly what you need. So that's what this is all about. This is about me giving back to those moments when I wanted that answer. So every week I go live with the opportunity for anybody to ask anything, whatever you're struggling with, be it your engineering, teamwork, leadership, agile, you name it. I've got you covered. I'll do my best to help out, and if I don't have the answer, I'll find a way to get you connected to somebody that does. All right, let us get the party started. That means I got to get my mouse in the right spot. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to talk through how I am using AI. This is a journey I've been on for about 60 hours now as I've been off building my own app, and I've been forcing myself to only use Claude code. There have been numerous times where I knew I could get this done faster, easier, more effectively if I just went into VS Code and banged it out. But that wasn't going to help me learn the best way to use Claude Code and figure out how I can effectively support my customers as I help numerous companies across the world figure out the best way to use tech or to grow tech or to grow their team, whatever it might be. And as you can imagine, how should we use AI is a frequent question. So my plan of attack is I'm going to have the answer because I've done the thing. So I prefer to take the practitioner's approach and tell you this is how I've done it, this is what I've learned, because I prefer to give experience versus advice. There's a lot of people that will give you advice, not as many can give you real experience. So that's what I leverage across my customer base. So here we are. This is my experience coding for the past month, forcing myself to about 2 hours a day. So that gives me about 60 hours under my belt of using AI. First things first, I am not going to cover vibe coding. There's plenty of resources out there about how you can vibe code anything. You can spin up a POC in hours and make millions. Number one, I don't buy it. Number two, if that does happen, your product's going to likely fall over soon and you're going to need to come back and do something like this. So this is a discussion about how you can build enterprise grade apps using AI tools. What does enterprise grade app means? That means when good stuff happens and your company blows up in a good way and you're getting customer on customer and just growth is through the window, your app just keeps humming. Vibe coding won't get you there. Vibe coding does a fantastic job of getting you up and running, working, getting that POC out to prove a thing, great. But you're going to need real coding practices and patterns that have been built on for decades. Now you have to be able to leverage those to build products. AI will build exactly what you ask it for. And oftentimes it's something quick and easy and ready to go. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, this was the big eye opener for me. This was when I had that aha moment with how I was thinking about and how I was using coding agents to build products. This is from a study from some folks in Stanford. Those of you that have been following me on social media know that they haven't published this yet. They've talked about it in a video on YouTube, which on my YouTube channel, you can watch my commentary about that. But what they published is after researching with over 100,000 devs across 600 companies, they got to some real data points about what does and doesn't work within coding. And context is one of those things that they will tout. We now have a context window of 2 million tokens, 3 million tokens, all these giant numbers. Great. That doesn't mean it's effective at using all of that. So what you'll see here is that as your lines of code get to be reasonable, over 10,000, it starts to drop off pretty quickly. And so let's talk about lines of code. So I've been spending 60 hours building my app. We're at about 70,000 lines of code. So our productivity gains have dropped from 60% when we first started, we were rocking and rolling, to now everything does feel a little bit harder. Now, this isn't unique to AI. This is real world. Teams of developers will struggle with this. As your code base gets larger, it's more challenging for you to keep everything in your brain, to keep it all straight. That's why there's patterns and practices and code reviews and all of those things. Guess what? Everything that's effective and useful for human developers is equally effective and useful for AI developers. So everything you've learned, that's still here. That still makes a difference. But you have to know that as time goes, your efficiency with using AI is going to drop, just as it does with regular developers. And by regular developers, I mean humans. So saying all that, one thing that you need to do is don't reinvent things. The things you've been doing with your traditional human-based dev team still apply. In fact, I would argue they are more important because humans have a greater capability to understand nuance and think through things and have a larger context view where it's not, hey, what if we looked over the last 2 million tokens, which, as we've seen, as the token numbers get higher, it becomes less effective. So everything you've done, thinking about keeping work items small, not having massive features that we're shipping. If you are in the agile world and you do story points, usually you're more effective at delivering stories where they're smaller. It's easier for humans to manage that context and to have that be self-contained and ship it. The same thing holds true with AI. So everything you've learned over the past however many years that you've been in the space, it's still important. And this is why I believe that software engineering isn't going to go away. Who's doing the data entry and how the data entry is done is changing, but that's no different than the folks that were doing assembly language way back in the day. And then there were next generation languages that came along where you didn't have to worry about assembly level coding. It got faster. This is the same thing. This is just that next step within that chain. So as we talk about what works well with humans, works well with AI. So make sure that when you're defining your work, that you are explicit and clear. And this has been something that I've had to really work on because, again, having worked with human dev teams for 25 years, I've been able to slack a little, right? Because humans understand that nuance and can fill in the blanks. And when you get really smart people, sometimes they fill in the blanks with things that are better than what you're thinking. But AI isn't there. AI doesn't do that yet. AI does exactly what you ask it to do. So you have to make sure that when you are prompting, creating the context, that you are explicit and clear. Again, think about the things you do that make you great in your job currently. You just have to turn that dial up to 11 and really think about every word, every prompt, every bit of context that you are giving it. Make sure it's clear. This is another thing. Make sure that you invest heavily in, I use Claude code. So the Claude markdown file is that instruction set. These are the base patterns and practices that we expect that you use. Invest heavily in making this happen because this is where you can get explicit with saying, this is how we build our product. These are the things we do. These are the things we don't do. When we test, these are the things we test. These are the things we don't test. So you can lay all of that out. Whatever tool you're using, they all have their own version. If it's Klein rules or Claude or cursor rules, whatever it is, they all have their same thing. What happened is mine, as I tried to get more and more explicit, and as I continued to see Claude struggling to deliver on what I was asking for, I realized that I was missing certain rules and patterns and practices that it needed to be successful in doing what I was asking it. Eventually, Claude Code said, hey, your markdown file's too big for me to manage. So what are you going to do about that? In response to that, what I did was I asked Claude, what should I do? Because you know you better than I know you. So what's the best answer? And the best answer was we broke it out into child markdown files. So there's a markdown file about how we manage the front end, what we test, what we don't test, our architecture, how we handle database queries, what is in the queries, what's in the service layer. So it lays it all out. And most importantly, I explicitly tell Claude every time to make sure whatever plan it's building or whatever coding it's doing, I explicitly say, make sure what you're doing aligns with everything defined in Claude MD. I found when I don't do that, it goes a little astray. So again, we go back to being explicit and clear. Every time, make sure that you put that in there. You can get fancy. You can build your own slash commands. You can do all of that. That auto does that. Sure. Great. Cool. I am not there yet because I'm trying to test the boundaries and figure out what works best and most efficiently. What I don't want to do is I don't want to create those custom slash commands, which then means I'm going to stop trying new stuff. So I'm investing in doing it all by hand to force myself to try various things to figure out what does and doesn't work so that I can come back in sessions like this with all of you and say, here's what I've learned. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't. Okay, we go back to all of the things that you're doing now. So I do the same thing with Claude Code that I do with all of my dev teams that I've ever built or worked with. We refine our backlog. We work together. We talk it through. I'll talk through how we do that in a minute. But again, all of that work to make sure that we have clearly well-defined issues or stories, whatever you want to call them, so that whoever is doing the coding, be it a human or an AI agent, can confidently grab that work and knock it out. That's what great refinement looks like. It doesn't matter who's doing the data entry, as I said, but still the hard work to do everything up front to make sure that when it's time to hit go, and whether you hand that off to Steve or Susie to go build it, or whether you hand it off to Claude to go build it, it can run as quickly as possible and do its thing. That takes work up front. All right, in the last week or so, there has been a new feature added to Claude Code that has started to change the way I think about things. So it now has sub-agents, and you can go in and define effectively a profile for each agent of this is how you think, this is what I need you to do. I found this to be really beneficial as we go back to the very start of keeping the context small. So with these sub-agents, what I can do is I have a product owner sub-agent. So as I'm refining the stories, as I'm refining the work, I now can have Claude focus on, hey, make this a world-class story with great AC. Go out and do the research to figure out how other people are doing this in our space or other ways that we can do that. Let's then add that to the GitHub issue. That then once we have that locked down and ready, we have an architect sub-agent that comes in and looks at all the requirements, looks at our Claude markdown files and all of the patterns and practices that we have defined there, and builds out a plan for how can we deliver on this ask. Then we have a full stack sub-agent that goes and grabs all of that and does the work. And again, the ultimate thing that we're driving for is that whoever's doing the coding, they can confidently grab that issue and go make it happen. So that's what all of that work leads up to, is that we can really make that happen. I just talked about the three amigos, got a little bit ahead of myself. Here's what it looks like. So with the product owner sub-agent, we have a base GitHub issue that I've created as I think through, hey, these are the things that we need to go build. I give it initial context of what we're doing. I then refer it to Claude markdown file, which defines our product, what we're trying to do, who our customer base is, what problems we're solving for them. It then uses that to go and do research and build out an extended GitHub issue so that we can then hand it off to the the architect that again goes into planning mode, does all the research, understands the issue completely, looks at our patterns and practices, builds out a plan that lines up with everything that we do, that is scalable and maintainable and everything that's defined within our markdown files, and we go make that happen. Then last piece, we hand that off to the full stack dev. What I have not done yet, and I'm not sure when that moment is coming, but I know that moment is coming where I can kick this off and just let it run. I still am operating as a human gate after each one of these steps. I've had it a couple times where after I've approved the plan from the architect sub-agent that the full stack dev just goes off and runs. It's worked sometimes. There's sometimes where it doesn't end up using the right agent, so I get a little bit nervous and end up stopping things. So I'm still figuring out how I can construct the prompts to effectively hand off from agent to agent. So I still have a little bit of work to do there. But this is the thing that as you start to break these down, you can start to envision the flywheel of how you can really gain speed and performance in delivering value. But still, there's still work that comes up front. It's not going to be magic. You're still going to do all the heavy lifting to get here to make this happen. One of the things I found as I've been using this approach is as I'm working through that life cycle of defining and building features or bugs or whatever it is that I'll inevitably realize, oh, I missed something. And when I've chosen to try and layer that additional context in, things started to get off the rails a little bit. So you have to fight because your brain is going to fire and you're going to start to realize, oh yeah, that's right, we should do this thing. Don't force it in. Fight like heck to not let yourself keep layering things in. Create another issue in GitHub. Go and tackle that small bit of context later. So be very careful about recognizing things. It's very natural because it's going to be impossible to get everything perfect. So that as you're working through that, maybe in the code review or in the planning stage, you realize, oh gosh, we forgot this acceptance criteria. We should add that. Don't. Make it another issue. Keep the context as you've defined it. Keep it tight. Keep it small. Let's execute on that. Then we'll come back and we'll add that extra little bit. Humans can usually manage that. But again, that's another one of those slippery slopes where it can start to get away from you and your team. So be careful when this happens because everything's accelerated now. So now you're going to be recognizing things like, oh, I could just squeeze this in. No, you can't. You can, but it's actually going to be a bit of a mess. So don't end up doing that. You have to, as I've talked about, fight to keep the context small. Your brain is going to be off and running again because the flywheel starts rolling and you're going faster than you've ever gone before, which can be dangerous. So I've had numerous times where I've had to slam the brakes on me because I start going too fast because Claude has enabled me to go faster. So I have to fight to slow myself down and I have to fight to make sure that the context is small in everything that we're doing because we as humans, we can still manage a greater context window than Claude can or whatever tool that you're using. So don't let your capability slip in and cause Claude to get into trouble because you're trying to layer in more complexity than it needs to handle. Again, small agents doing small things and line them up. Iterate. Imagine that. Something we've been talking about in the Agile space for, 20 years. Iterate on small chunks of work. Our tools now allow you to do that at an even greater pace. So that's why holding firm to small chunks of work that stack up on top of each other, that's what's going to win. I still test by hand. Claude oftentimes claims victory and says it's done. I have unit tests. I have other tests that run that are validated, but I still run everything by hand. I found that when I don't manually test these things, we start to get a little bit of a drift. So if you play video games, you have an old controller and you get that stick drift where your player just tends to like always walk to the right a little bit. The same thing happens with your app here in Claude, is Claude will start to drift a little bit. So if you don't maintain that tightness, and if you aren't staying on top of it and really understanding what is happening, bringing the human element to validate that, if you do that for too long, you're going to be drifting quite far, and you might get to a point where it's going to be hard to get back towards the center that you were trying to stay on. So test everything by hand, stay in there, stay connected with the product that you're building, because AI might be building it, but humans are going to use it. So don't lose that bit. AI builds it, humans use it. So make sure you, as the first human, are testing it. Code review. This is something that I've gotten pretty happy with, the whole pattern and practice that I've been running with here. So when we create a branch in GitHub, we create a pull request, we automatically get code reviews from 3 different tools. Claude Code does its thing, GitHub Copilot does its thing, and CodeRabbit. And what's nice is, just like in the human world, they all do it a little bit differently. So you get interesting, different viewpoints about how each of them looks at the code. That's very effective. That's what we do in the human world, so this works very well. I'm the 4th head of this 3-headed dragon. It's now a 4-headed dragon, where I review the code as well. Just like testing, this is another one of those things where I keep an eye on it to make sure that we don't get that drift over time, or we start to drift away from the architecture. Because what I found is that when Claude gets stuck, Claude might get to a point where it's trying to deliver on something that you've asked, but it can't just get it right. So there's times where it just starts layering things on top of it to try and get it to work. So something doesn't work, it adds another layer and another layer and another layer. And oftentimes that drift gets pretty massive, to where the thing runs, the thing does its thing, but it's now doing it differently than you expected or asked. So it delivered on the ask, but not in an enterprise manner. To me, that is a huge difference in the vibe coding versus the enterprise view that we're talking about, is that we are able to maintain our architectural approach across the entire app to ensure that it's going to scale. Again, we want this thing to be standing tall when things go well and you get 1 million customers. Okay, so the pull request is in there. We have reviews from Claude Code, from Copilot, and from CodeRabbit. What do? We then go and ask Claude Code, hey, read through all of the comments on that PR and decide what we should do. How should we respond to each of those? Make sure that we have a plan for each comment that's out there. Let's decide what we're going to do and how we're going to respond. Usually we can one-shot this, and it's going to be able to look at all of that, build a plan for, okay, these are the ones that we're going to address. This is how we're going to do it. And usually it's pretty good. We've had a couple times where it's taken a couple of round trips, and usually that's where things get messy. And as I look back, there was a lack of clarity and context that I did a poor job with setting things up. So usually that's an operator problem, but normally we get this in one shot and we're in a really good spot. What these code review tools aren't really great at yet is that when you add another update to that PR, it tends to get confused about what it reviewed the first time, what came in the second time, and then having that clear of, this is what I said the first time, this is what I said the second time. There's often times where it kind of smashes them together, and it's a little difficult to sort things out. So be aware that your second round of comments on a PR can get a little bit challenging to sort through, but it's all there. So I am sure those tools are going to get better, but that's a bit of a challenge. And I kind of hinted at this as I was talking about on the last slide, is that you don't have to fix every PR that's out there. But if you're not going to fix it, but you still want to fix it at some point, have a GitHub issue created so that you now don't lose the context of what the issue was. So what I do is I ask Claude Code, hey, if we aren't going to fix that right now, use all the context that we have right now in this moment to build a GitHub issue, so that a week from now or 2 weeks from now, when we go to pick that up, we have everything we need, again, to confidently grab that work and make it happen. So carry that context with you by creating an issue. I said it before, I've said it a lot here in this stream. Make sure that you fight to keep your context small. There are a handful of ways that we can do this. Number one, have a great markdown file that defines your patterns and practices. Number two, use sub-agents that focus on doing one bit of that process so it can be great at that. And number three, build your work items small, just as you've been taught to do over the past couple of decades. The smaller the better, and learn how to stack them up nicely so that they build on top of each other. If you do that, you're going to be in a fantastic shape. All right, so how have I learned all this? So I am building Road Trip Ninja, which is my personal app that I've wanted to build for about a decade now using AI. And I'm about to launch this thing because I think we're at MVP stage, probably a little bit more. I've done the thing you're not supposed to do. I've probably gold plated it a little bit. But I think I'm at the point we're going to start to launch this. So I stream myself doing all of this coding. So you can tune into whatever channel you're on right now. If it's Twitch or YouTube or Kick or whatever it is, I live stream the coding that I'm doing. So if you want to watch and learn and ask questions and be a part of the journey, you can do that on, again, whatever you're watching on now. So subscribe, follow, whatever the tool is on whatever channel that you're on. Go ahead and hit that, and we'll be chatting probably later tonight as I go and build some more. We're going to add Apple Sign Up. That is next for us. Okay, I did the thing I normally do. I get fired up and I start talking about stuff, and I go on for too long, and I've gone for 27 minutes. So the floor is yours. Ask any questions you may have about AI coding, the tools that I'm using, or anything that may be struggling you today with your work in the technology space, be it teamwork, leadership, specific technology, anything that goes along with that. I'm here to help, but I can't help you if you don't ask. Use that chat. Well, maybe not. And that's okay. Okay. If we don't have any questions in the live stream, I publish a ton of content to TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram. Hit me up in the comments there. I respond to as many comments as I can with questions or thoughts, or just appreciating people that help me out with, hey, you should try this. Have you done that? This is a great way to approach that. Or, gosh, I ran into that problem too, and here's how I've solved it. So appreciate everybody in the community, be it the live streams or on TikTok or whatever it might be. Appreciate you all being part of this journey. And I will see you next week when we tune in to who knows what we're going to talk about. But until then, subscribe to all my channels and you'll see me building the products live and in person.